Thank you, Mr. President. I move that this House notes the importance of the Western Australian agricultural industry to our regional communities and our state economy, and calls on the state government to implement the policy measures outlined in the National's Vision for Agriculture to support this industry by investing in research and development, land and water, getting produce to market, investment and trade, and skills.
The question is that motion be agreed to. The Honourable Martin Aldridge.
Thanks, Mr. President. It's great that we're discussing two motions today in the chamber that affect regional communities and regional people. This motion is of great importance to me and my constituency of the agricultural region, and I'm sure all of the regions in Western Australia. In speaking to the motion, I'd like to firstly talk about some of the development of agriculture in Western Australia since colonisation, and I'd also like to speak about some of the challenges and opportunities that the industry faces. I'd then like to speak about some of the solutions that my party colleagues and I took to the last election, and particularly around ways in which we can address some of those challenges and maximise some of the opportunity for the future of the industry. Shortly after colonisation in Western Australia, much of the land around the Swan River colony was deemed to be unsuitable for agriculture. As the Honourable Paul Brown mentioned in his maiden speech, it wasn't long until exploration over the Darling Scarp occurred, and in 1831 led to the first inland town in York. Shortly after, this area became successful livestock country, and much of the Avon Valley was subsequently developed over the following years. Sheep farming, the most successful early agricultural pursuit, expanded into the Pilbara in the 1860s and the Gascoyne in the Midwest in the 1870s. By the end of 1886, there was estimated to be more than 2 million sheep in WA, producing the bulk of the colony's exports. At around this time, the grains industry was beginning to take shape. At the end of 1886, over 84,000 acres were under crop. This was the beginning of a huge increase in crop production in Western Australia. WA soon expanded its agricultural industry to many other sectors, including dairy, horticulture, orchards, and many other pursuits. With an agricultural economy that was heavily livestock-oriented at the time, grains being predominantly grown in the eastern states, WA first became a major producer of grain towards the end of 1905. The increase in agricultural production that WA experienced during this time coincided with the discovery of gold in Kalgoorlie and the subsequent gold rush in the late 1800s. There are countless other examples across the last 100 years where mining has boomed and agriculture has continued to be the quiet achiever in our economy. Throughout the early 1900s, agriculture and mining as they do today underpinned the Australian economy. At a recent meeting in Merredin, which I attended and many of my colleagues did, almost 1,000 farmers and members of the agricultural community turned up to detail some of the concerns that they had with the industry and discuss some of the difficulties that they are facing. The focus of this and other recent meetings was the impact of successive bad seasons and some of the challenges that farmers face as a result. The member for Central Wheatbelt, Mia Davies, in the other place, mentioned earlier this year that the debate around supporting our farmers had become about drought policy and become too focused on transactional subsidies, loans and grants. I feel that this is a particularly important point, as purely being reactionary in these circumstances could have dire consequences for the future of the industry. I think the Honourable Ken Baston mentioned in response to a question on notice recently that I think the figure was about 40 farmers who were having difficulty accessing finance this season and would probably not be planting a crop. To put that into some perspective, that's about 1% of the grain growing industry. So whilst we should recognise that, we shouldn't lose sight of the other 99% of the industry, which some still are in hardship, but that are looking towards the opportunities that the future brings. Drought policy has traditionally been viewed as an emergency strategy rather than a strategy to deal with the ongoing problem that a drying climate is becoming. This is an opportunity to support the agricultural sector to make sure it can sustain diversify and expand to meet not only our needs, but the needs of our neighbours to the north. The Liberal and National parties were criticised by those opposite during the election, and as recently as during debate last evening. Both the Liberal Party and the National Party are independent political parties working together in an alliance government. I acknowledge that the Liberal Party also launched an agricultural policy during the campaign, and some elements of this platform reflect similar views to our vision for agriculture. Reducing regulatory burdens and improving property rights are amongst some of the initiatives of the Liberal Party platform, which should, in my view, form part of the government's post-election platform for the industry. I see this as a strength, not a weakness, of the alliance government, a contest of ideas, and now the challenge to implement a policy that reflects the best of both. Agriculture has been the backbone of regional communities for more than a century. If farmers are doing well, they're spending money in their local towns, in their shops, in their dealerships. This creates more jobs, attracts more people, keeps the sporting clubs going, and creates a vibrant regional community. Alongside the impediments facing the WA agricultural sector, there is also vast opportunity almost in every direction. As the economies of countries such as China and India continue to grow, massive opportunities exist to increase or even double our agricultural output over coming years. These opportunities could see our exports increase from roughly 6 billion to 12 billion or even beyond, provided we can continue to export the high-quality produce that WA has become synonymous with. It is the aim of the Nationals to allow our farmers to capitalise on the opportunities presented by investing heavily in infrastructure and research. This investment, spread over 5 key areas, which I'll outline today briefly, will help our farmers to do exactly what they have been doing for more than 100 years: adapt to changing conditions and producing world-class food. The 5 areas outlined in our $300 million pre-election commitment were research and development, land and water, getting produce to market, investment and trade, and skills, and I'll briefly touch on each this morning. Firstly, research and development. With the need for the agricultural sector to be constantly evolving, high-class research and development is essential to respond to the challenges of a changing environment and to remain leaders in the agricultural sector. This involves not only scientific research to develop new crop varieties, but new technology and new farming practices, but also better understandings of economic and market research to work out what our customers want, examine and predict market trends, identify market opportunities, and ways to make farmers more profitable. WA has taken the lead for innovation in the grain sector. We intend to enable our farmers and researchers to go further. Our vision will inject $20 million into these grassroots grower groups, allowing them to capitalise on research opportunities. It is my view that it is best targeted by these grower groups. They are at the grassroots and they understand most clearly what the priorities are for their industry. WA is Australia's biggest grain producer and therefore is best equipped to develop greater technology to complement that fact. This $40 million investment will enable our farmers to change farming practices in order to ensure the increase in quality and the output that farmers are seeking. Research and development is all well and good on its own. However, without the appropriate measures to properly manage risk, it might not come to much. This is why the policy will provide $10 million to help growers and researchers better understand and manage risk. This comes in the form of increasing the weather station network, increasing the number of yield profit sites. And this is a point that insurance companies have raised with the government when looking at more comprehensive insurance schemes for WA growers. In the Weekend West this last Saturday, an article by Brad Thompson titled "Farmers Urge Action as Time Runs Out on Crop Insurance" referenced the WA Nationals promised royalties for regions funding for the radar, 2 Doppler radars, during the election campaign. Senior TCC executives, which is the Climate Corporation, Dave Friedberg and Andy Leventhal, met farmers, politicians, industry leaders and government officials during a recent trip to WA. TCC's yield-based insurance product relies heavily on technology, including radar coverage, which allows paddock-by-paddock weather analysis. It's interesting that, it's important that the foresight that went into the development of this policy primarily by Minister Redman and Minister Grills and the rest of the National Party candidates across the state actually predicted the need for the government to play a greater role in providing some of this data to the insurance companies. And as late as Saturday in the West Australian, we saw that call echoed once again. This policy will allow that to happen. In the agricultural region, it'll provide another $10 million for Sheep Industry Development Centre in Katanning, and outside the agricultural region, a further $15 million in the Northern Beef Industry Development Centre in the Kimberley, and $5 million to establish an Organic Foods Industry Research Centre in Bunbury. Some of the other aspects of the policy include land and water. As I mentioned earlier, our state's ability to increase agricultural production over fewer hectares has been a feature of agriculture in the last 3 decades. In order for this to continue, we need to be able to more effectively use our often underutilised water supplies in the north and adapt our often constrained water supplies in the south with the drying climate. Achievements in the last term of this government, including the Ord Stage 2 development in the Kimberley, several mining-based agricultural projects, expansion of the Carnarvon irrigation area in the Gascoyne Food Bowl initiative, and exploring the development of recycled water in the Peel region have all contributed to the beginnings of more efficient water use in Western Australia. Getting produce to market is an important element of the platform. The markets that exist outside of Australia are too important to allow infrastructure and inefficiencies to prevent maximisation of the opportunities that accompany them. There's been a lot of debate recently about the state of infrastructure in regional Western Australia and the most cost-effective way of getting our produce to market. This policy will allow an immediate infrastructure audit to be done across the agricultural sector and identify bottlenecks that are preventing further exports from Western Australia to the world. $75 million is allocated to the Infrastructure Investment Fund to help us start to address some of those bottlenecks in our transport systems, seaports, airports and packaging facilities. WA has always been an export state. 80% of our agricultural commodities are currently shipped overseas. Our domestic market is relatively small, meaning that the only way to increase the size of our agricultural sector is to sell more overseas. WA has a reputation for delivering top quality fresh produce to our international customers, and this is why we propose a $7 million fund to develop Brand WA to sell our brand to the world. One of WA's strongest selling point is our relative freedom from pests and diseases. This policy intends to maintain and strengthen that reputation by providing $20 million to bolster the state's biosecurity measures. In skills, we intend to invest another $10 million, a further $10 million, to provide a transformation to the Muresk Institute. This is in addition to the $10 million already invested into Muresk by Royalties for Regions in the previous term of government. We'll also fund a program to boost the skills of people already employed in the sector, including free business diagnostic checks, industry workshops and business advisor support. This $20 million program will enable people already employed within the agricultural sector to get the desired outcomes for their businesses. The former Minister for Agriculture and Food, the Honourable Terry Redmond, and the Minister for Regional Development, the Honourable Brendan Grills, launched the National's Vision for Agriculture in January of this year. And in launching that, Mr Grills said, 15 years ago, no one could have predicted how the mining and resources sector would revolutionise the regional economy. With the right investment, agriculture can achieve the same sort of transformation we have seen in mining and resources, which will benefit regional communities and the entire state. As the Nationals look forward to 2020, we see agriculture as the next investment boom in regional WA. Mr Redmond went on to say, Asia's economic growth and quest for food security provides WA agriculture with a unique opportunity. We have the opportunity to use Royalties for Regions to help attract the domestic and international investment in agriculture that creates regional jobs and can build on the mining sector to create diversity in our economy. To make that happen, we need to invest in the right areas to make the biggest difference. Agriculture is set to be the next boom industry, and with this set of policy initiatives, we as a government can help it to flourish, not only to meet our needs, but meet the needs of our growing Asian neighbours. The Nationals have been on the front foot in supporting growth in our agricultural sector after releasing this policy earlier this year. With the right policy in place, we can enable our current and future farmers to meet the challenges associated with a changing climate and an increasing global demand. I look forward to working with the Minister for Agriculture and Food, the Honourable Ken Baston, and I congratulate him on his appointment. I'm sure he has similar optimism for this sector, and I look forward to working with him during this term. This policy...
Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to.